Relatively speaking, very few enslaved Africans were sent to the English colonies of North America that eventually became the United States. Of the roughly 10 to 11 million enslaved Africans who survived the Middle Passage across the Atlantic Ocean from Africa to the New World, only 4 to 5% ended up in English North America. Can we then conclude that English Americans played little or even no role in the growth of New World slavery? In other words, how could the vast majority of English Americans have had anything to do with slavery if there were so few enslaved Africans in North America? In fact, English North America played an absolutely crucial role in the growth of New World slavery, especially after the mid-17th century. As I've noted, most enslaved Africans did not end up in North America. Where then were they sent? The answer? To Brazil and to the West Indies, the region we usually call the Caribbean. Why were they sent to these regions, to islands like English Barbados in the Caribbean? They were sent to these regions because this is where Europeans forced enslaved Africans to grow sugar, not cotton. Sugar was an incredibly profitable crop. In fact, sugar was so profitable, European plantation owners wanted their enslaved laborers spending as much time as possible producing sugar, not growing the food they needed to sustain themselves. It was actually cheaper to import food for the slaves, along with other supplies needed to run the sugar plantations, than it was to produce it locally on the islands. And from where did the European sugar planters in the West Indies import most of the food and supplies they needed to support a thriving sugar industry based on enslaved African labor? You guessed it, the slave system in the West Indies depended almost completely on English North America for food and supplies. In other words, English North Americans provided the food and supplies that enabled slavery to flourish in the West Indies. American colonists were absolutely crucial to the slave system in the Caribbean. And how did West Indian sugar planters pay for the food and supplies that they imported from North America? The answer? Sugar and molasses, a byproduct of sugar production. In other words, West Indian sugar planters paid for the food and supplies they imported from North America by exchanging them for sugar and molasses. North Americans imported millions of gallons of molasses from the West Indies to North America, especially to northern colonies like Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And what did North Americans do with all this molasses? Well, they didn't use it to bake cakes with grandma. They used it to make booze, to make rum. And what did they do with much of this rum? They shipped it to West Africa, where they traded it for enslaved human beings, who were then shipped across the Atlantic Ocean to the West Indies, who were then forced to produce sugar and molasses, which was then sent to North America, where it was distilled into rum, shipped to West Africa, and used to, you guessed it, buy more Africans for the West Indian sugar plantations.